Like I said, this is the crown jewel of the Wavvest platform. I would say this is the most differentiated part of our platform. The way that this works in real simple terms, we take any type of context that we can gather, statements. We'll talk about how Apex custodial data flows into the tool. We'll talk a little bit about other forms of context that can pop into this. We use natural language. We turn all of that into a fully baked out financial plan. So we're going to walk through kind of in rapid fire fashion here, a couple of examples. So we're going to put some Apex data into the tool. I'm going to select a sample customer. I'm just going to select some sample accounts for myself. So we're loading in some Apex accounts. So all of that custodial data is automatically flowing into the tool. And then we're going to put a prompt into the tool that we just kind of copied and pasted. We'll zoom in a second and we'll show you what we're actually putting in this prompt. So as you can see, we've put in a prompt. This would be sort of like an after action report, right? You meet with the client tells you I have X, Y, and Z needs that I want to see modeled out. Well, you take those notes, you simply copy and paste them into the tool, and then the tool is going to build out a plan. We'll talk about how it's actually doing that in a second. So in this particular example, I'm going to use myself and my wife, Haley. We have kind of three things that we want to model out here. So we want to buy a house. Let's say we want to buy $1 million house here in Chicago in 10 years. I just had a son. He's 7 months old. We know he's like super smart, so he's definitely going to go to Harvard. So we want to model out, can we afford to send Roman to Harvard in 18 years? And I think the answer probably is no, given how much education is inflating. And then we want to just do sort of like a general purpose retirement readiness check. So again, just to reiterate, Wavvest planning, take context, take natural language inputs, and then all of that is going to turn into a fully baked out financial plan. The best way to use this tool is to be as sort of detailed as possible. Any sort of financial planning is going to be garbage in and garbage out, right? If you give the tool a lot of context, if you give the tool a lot of information, then it's going to produce something that's a lot more thoughtful, right? So you want your prompts to be as sort of detailed as possible. So as this thing's loading up, I'm going to walk through kind of what's actually going on the back end, right? So there's essentially three components of Wavvest planning that are relevant here, or three separate steps. The first step is an AI agent that's just absorbing context, right? So we've got our Apex data that's been piped into this tool, so it's absorbing all of the underlying holdings and asset allocation and all of that. That's one layer of context. It's also absorbing context from our prompt, right? So we asked about the cost of Harvard education in 18 years. So it's going out to the internet to figure out, well, what does Harvard cost now? What is a reasonable inflation assumption that we can use to see how that cost will grow? It's going out and just pulling in all of that context. The second step in this process is to do some math. So up until recently, AI kind of sucked at doing math. So to make this a little bit more deterministic from a math standpoint, we hard-coded a calculator into the tool. The third step, which is really where the magic happens, and as you see this plan that's generated on the right-hand side, the third step is to write code. So we're showing this little summary that it's outputted, but here's the actual financial plan. This plan is the result of uniquely generated code that was written on the fly to render what we asked the plan to render, right? So we asked for some home purchase projections, we asked for some education planning, we asked for some retirement readiness. So we were able to do all of this on the fly by writing code on the fly. So because of the way we've architected this tool, we've basically made financial planning infinitely flexible. You give the tool context, you tell the tool, hey, I want to model something out. It's actually just going to build that for you on the fly using all of the context. One thing that we find super important about AI is you need AI to be as transparent as possible. So we've architected this to have the tool outline all of the assumptions and all the inputs that are going into it, right? There's this concept in AI called human in the loop. You still need to be the human being that checks the output, that verifies that the output is correct. And, on our side, we do everything possible to ensure that's true. You should stress test the assumptions of this tool. So that's kind of what we're going to do here. We're going to ask it, hey, can you lay out how you derive the cost of Harvard when Roman would attend? What sort of underlying assumptions are you using to generate the calculations you've generated? And the tool will be very transparent. It will give you back exactly what it did, right? So again, going back to that sort of human in the loop concept We want you as an advisor to make sure that you're testing the output, you understand what the underlying assumptions are. Of course, at Wavvest, we do everything possible to make sure that we eliminate hallucinations and make sure that output is accurate. But the tool is incredibly transparent, and it's designed to be as transparent as possible. So we think this is a really cool kind of brief example of how you could do some scenario analysis based on a client conversation that you've had. But that's not all that it can do. We have a lot of clients that use this as a transition proposal tool, right? So you've got a legacy portfolio. Your firm probably maintains a list of model portfolios. You've won a new piece of business. How are we going to transition it? Well, you could use this template that we've designed in Wavvest Planning to lay out, here's the existing portfolio, here's the models. You can create little widgets in the tool to sort of model out the trade-off between tax impact and tracking error. All of these things are really just there. And the way we've architected this to be flexible is to enable you as an advisor to have a really good conversation with a client. So how you'd use this in practice, you'd pull up this template that we have, you'd put a prompt in, and we'll walk through what's going on in the prompt. We'll attach some external files. So in this case, it's a brokerage statement that you've been given from a client. They've asked you, hey, make some sense of this. How can we transition this portfolio over to your firm? You pop that context in, and then you're off to the races. So in this particular example, we'll zoom in on the prompt. We want to transition the legacy portfolio into a portfolio, some hypothetical portfolio. It's 50% VOO, 15% some US and small cap, 20% in some international exposure, and then 15% in core bonds. So we gave the tool that prompt, and then the tool goes off to work writing all the code to create the plan. So I used to be an advisor in a past life. This process that you just saw here, right? This process of absorbing a bunch of legacy holdings, figure out how we're going to transition it to a new portfolio. That process would have taken me a week. And, I wasn't being paid very much to do it. And so it was a really cumbersome way to go about creating transition plans. We were able to generate a fully baked out, and you'll see in a second, really thoughtful transition plan in a matter of seconds, right? So we're absorbing all of this context, and then we're rendering back something that could be really useful for clients, right? Financial planning, at the end of the day, it's about having useful clients or having useful conversations with your client, making them feel like you're being thoughtful, making them feel like you understand their situation, right? So creating a phased implementation plan over a couple of tax years, being really thoughtful about how we're going to transition a portfolio at the outset of a relationship with a client. This level of detail, this level of sort of hand-holding is going to make you look really good as an advisor. So we've walked through a sort of everyday financial planning and modeling example, which was the example we used of myself and my education planning and home purchase. We walked through a transition proposal. Now we're going to talk through tax planning. So it's not just everyday financial planning or investments. We can actually analyze tax returns as well. So a lot of our advisor base, they'll use this as like a Holistaplan replacement, or they'll use this just to get some general information about what's going on with a client's tax picture. A lot of our clients are also using this to scrape estate planning documents. So the tool is really good at parsing through PDFs, understanding what's going on underneath the hood. So if you've got a client that already has an existing estate plan and you want to model out, okay, where are assets going to distribute once the grantor passes, this is the type of modeling you can do within the tool. It's not just simple revocable living trusts. You can look at GRATs, you can look at slats, ILETs, any sort of more complex irrevocable trusts. All of that is on the table with Wavvest Planning.